501c3 nonprofit organization in the United States in October 2010. It was actually, and is working with the subsidiary, LifeBridge Pakistan Trust, which was recently formed, which is registered under the Social Welfare Act of Pakistan. LifeBridge's mission and message is one of peace and a brotherhood bound by humanity. After having been raised in America, my identity as a Sindhi actually brought me back. I went there on a 1-month visitor visa. I wanted to find out more about my heritage, and I was there about 3 days. And a friend of mine who's actually a humanitarian, ex-humanitarian affairs officer for UN OCHA and now works for another local organization, basically said to me that some of the villages that they had adopted for sustainable livelihood projects got affected by the floods. So she was going out to do a site visit and do some provision of tents and rations and stuff. And they didn't know much about health, so she asked me if I could go with her, just to kind of make sure everything was okay. So while I was on the way there, she told me that the UN had was starting to come down to Sindh, and they hadn't set up shop completely yet. They were still doing the whole visiting thing. The government of Pakistan, the government of Sindh, was working in Sindh, and a couple of the NGOs that are close partners with the government had already started doing their work. But they weren't sure because the devastation was so huge. They were spread very, very thin. There were a lot of affected people. So I went down there 3 days after I got to Pakistan, and I was basically not expecting to see patients, not expecting to get caught up in flood relief. But I went there and I was walking through the tent city and I heard a baby coughing. The baby sounded like pneumonia. When I asked the field officer when was the last time a doctor was there, I was told 4 or 5 days. And this was in Shikarpur, Sindh. And so it was 4 or 5 days prior, and which was kind of, I mean, given the situation, I guess it was because they were spread so thin, but people should have been there regularly, whether it was the NGO or it was the government or whoever it was. There had to be a more coordinated effort. The problem was that I think that the magnitude of the disaster, it hit north, then it hit the middle, then it went all the way down south, and everybody was just kind of dispersed. They reacted the way that the disaster hit. So the least amount of energy was being given to Sindh. Meanwhile, the devastation in Sindh was ridiculous. There was 7 million people that were displaced last year. And it was taking people time to come down. So anyway, I'm walking around and it sounds like a pneumonia case, so I said, let me go listen to this child's chest and make sure whether it is pneumonia or not, because if it is, the close proximity in which they're living would cause more children to end up with pneumonia. So I said, I walked over to my car, grabbed my stethoscope, went over to go listen to this child, and literally in like a 7-foot distance between the car and myself, I was overrun by mothers. Mothers with little babies, little infants, less than a year old, all coming up to me and basically speaking in Sindhi and saying, can you please see my child? See my child first. See my child first. One of the things that worked towards my benefit massively, and I guess made it so easy for me to just kind of immerse myself, is the fact that I speak Sindhi fluently. So it was very easy for me to kind of understand their problems. So once they understood I was a doctor, I understood their problems, I was a female, dominantly all women, maternal and child health cases were coming up to me. A lot of, normally women don't seek care in interior regions of Sindh. They don't, it's a cultural, I don't want to say problem because, you know, they're okay with it, but I mean, medically it's a problem. They don't go out and seek care because they have to be chaperoned for long distances from their villages into the hospitals, and so they normally won't seek the care. What they'll do is they'll stay there and they'll use traditional birth attendants, and then end up in very horrible situations where they're basically bleeding out during pregnancy. You know, they're giving birth to stillborn children. A lot of other, like sepsis, neonatal sepsis is a big issue. Low birth rate is a big issue. Malnutrition is a big issue. All stuff that's related with maternal and child health. If the mother is not able to seek care, she will not take her child to the hospital. Men, on the other hand, obviously they're more aggressive and it's okay and whatever, so they go and they seek out the care. So you tend to see a lot of infants and mothers and pregnant and lactating women that are having problems. So that was the overabundance of what I was seeing when I was in this tent city. And while I was there, I decided to start doing wellness camps for these women, which was very, again, ad hoc. Nothing that was planned. We were just going about it, and I asked these women if they were getting any prenatal care, and they were like, no. And they were well into their 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th months. So I said, you know, you guys need to get some shots, you guys need to get some supplements. So we actually started doing these little wellness camps. I mean, they weren't amazing, but it was better than what they were getting. So, so that's how it ended up happening. And then when I was actually seeing these people, it turns out that 100% of the tent city was sick. There were 1,100 people, and all 1,100 were sick. The range of illness was different. Some people were, you know, 10%, 15% sick. Some people were very, very sick. The very, very sick ones got referred out, and we took them over to government hospitals. In Shikarpur, it was a district-level Shikarpur hospital, which we were working with. In Sakhar, we had to take them to a private medical center. And in Ranipur, we were actually transferring them into Shikarpur, which was because the Ranipur hospital was over, it was inundated, basically. It was over, and it was stretched too far. It didn't have enough doctors. It didn't have enough. So they had too much going on. Even here at medical center, the private medical centers were also in full capacity. You know, beyond it. They had 4 people on one bed. 4 children on one bed, sorry. So anyway, at some point I actually started seeing a high prevalence of vaccine preventable diseases. Hepatitis, TB, measles. I found a measles case in Ranipur at a tent city, which I had to take to the hospital. Again, a lot of issues that, once again, have to do with maternal and child health. And just a lack of understanding. It's unfortunate, but because of the language barriers, when people go in to intervene in the villages, not all of them are necessarily Sindhi speaking. And that creates a huge language barrier for them to understand. In order for people to respond and understand the concept of clean water, or sanitation, or ways to prevent acute watery diarrhea at home, or brushing your teeth, little simple hygiene messages, open defecation, all these things are very, they're very, within, on a community level, they're very handleable. Wrong word, but that's what that means. You can deal with it, you can sit down, they're responsive, they want to know. The issue just is the fact that they don't understand, unless you're speaking to them in Sindhi. And not handing out messages, because that won't work either. It's got to be actually sitting down and talking to them. And interventions when you're planning or starting to implement, before you implement the program. One of the things that a party message from my side, for anybody involved in this, is to go in and to talk to them on a community level. What do they need? Because if we're sitting in Karachi and we're deciding, or in Islamabad, and we're talking about putting in water pumps, when they don't want a water pump, they have a bigger problem like shelter, or they would rather have somebody visiting them for maternal and child health, then that should be the intervention that we're doing, and then they take ownership over that. They will feel like it's actually something that they want to do and they want to be a part of. So I have to wrap up, but yeah. So I guess my parting message is definitely that language and intervention should be community-based. And just before I stop for 2 seconds, the devastation of Badin is taking over. It's horrendous. The last message that I really do need to pass is LifeBridge's Pakistan team was just on ground in Badin twice. We did an assessment. People are in spontaneous camps. They don't have tents. They are living under the open sky. We actually have pictures. If you were to raise the last couple of slides. So just pass this by. Yes. Spontaneous settlements off the roadside. They're just basically using their own sheets. What we really do need to focus in on them. We need to zero in on them. It's not enough. There was not enough media attention last year for the 7 million that were affected. There's definitely not enough this year. I mean, it's not even on the radar. And it's hard for me to fathom as an American. that when we see Haiti and we see everything else, we see nothing about Pakistan, and I'm on the ground on Pakistan. I know how miserable this is. We have malnutrition numbers that are being compared to the Great African Famine, and yet it's not anywhere on the news radar. So I urge and I hope, and I'm asking all of you, Pakistani, American, Indian, Sindhi, it doesn't really matter. Just bring it to whoever's attention that you can, because this is, like UNICEF has said, it is a humanitarian disaster of epic proportions, and it really does need some attention.
Could I ask that your testimony be submitted to the congressional record so that people can see it? And could I ask as well that you go and brief the Women's Caucus as well as the Congressional Human Rights Caucus? It shouldn't stop here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, you can show the other last two pictures, and then Dr. Flum can take over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chinani. I think